The formation of the OAU, or the Organization of African Unity, was a key moment in a centuries-long struggle against colonialism, capitalism, and imperialism. For more than 500 years, African people have been dehumanized and degraded, with their bodies and labor commodified to enrich a ruling elite. From slave labor on cotton and sugar plantations to the extraction of gold and diamonds from the earth, the development of Europe and the Americas happened through the rapid exploitation of African people. Through the collective experiences of deprivation, African people in the diaspora and continent developed a resistance movement. There were many milestones in this process. The formation of independent Maroon communities by former slaves and Afro-Caribbean people, the first Pan-African Conference held in 1900, the fifth Pan-African Congress in Manchester, 1945, and over the decades, political consciousness grew around the necessity to wage a revolutionary Pan-African struggle against colonial and imperial rule in the 20th century. The revolutionary anti-colonial movements culminated in the mid-century with the independence of several African nations from European powers and the formation of the Organization of African Unity. African Liberation Day, as it came to be known, was born from the fierce fight for a new society. As Kwame Nkrumah said, the African Revolution, while still concentrating its main effort on the destruction of imperialism, colonialism, and neocolonialism, aims at the same time to bring about a radical transformation of society. The two have chosen liberation and unification. Socialism are synonymous. One cannot be achieved without the other. Today, African unity and liberation from exploitation is a distant reality. Western Sahara and some islands in the Indian Ocean remain under colonial rule. Capitalism continues to brutally ravage and exploit Africa and its people. The IMF and World Bank have consistently imposed a neo-colonial agenda on the continent, and the Organization of African Unity, now known as the African Union, is a puppet of capital and elite interests. The International Working Class on May 25th celebrates the victories of revolutionary Pan-Africanism. On African Liberation Day, it recalls the long history of struggles against
revolutionaries are guided by a deep feeling of love for the people. We, the participants of African Liberation Day, view this film as a sincere demonstration of our undying love for our brothers and sisters who daily wage an armed struggle for national liberation against the forces of racism and capitalism. On May 27th, 60,000 black people demonstrated the solidarity which we have for our brothers and sisters waging armed national liberation struggles on the continent. This massive demonstration of African solidarity proved to be the largest of its kind since those organized by the Universal Negro Improvement Association in the 1920s. Back in the 1920s, Marcus Garvey, the president of the Universal Negro Improvement Association, organized a mass-based Pan-African movement that called for the liberation and unification of the African continent. Also, during the first half of the 20th century, black intellectuals such as Sylvester Williams, W.E.B. Du Bois, and George Padmore organized a series of Pan-African conferences which called for the elimination of colonialist domination in Africa. In the 1950s and 60s, Africans in the U.S. moved from struggling for civil rights to actively destroying and liberating property from the oppressor. While we moved thus in our struggle to gain liberation, African peoples on the continent were granted independence. In the territories of Africa where white settler regimes and Portuguese colonialists attempted to remain in power, armed struggles for national liberation developed. These brothers and sisters do the work of both building a nation and carrying on a war of national liberation. Although thousands of our people showed support for these national liberation struggles on May 27th, there are still millions of us who fail to realize the importance of Africa. Part of the answer to this important problem of identification was pointed out by Brother Malcolm X in his last recorded speech.
Up until 1959, Africa was dominated by the colonial powers, and by the colonial powers of Europe having complete control over Africa, they projected the image of Africa negatively. They projected Africa always in a negative light. Jungle, savages, cannibals, nothing civilized. And naturally, it was so negative until it was negative to you and me. And you and I began to hate it. We didn't want anybody to tell us anything about Africa, much less call us an African. And in hating Africa and hating the African, we ended up even hating ourselves without even realizing it. Because you can't hate the roots of a tree and not hate the tree. You can't hate your origin and not end up hating yourself. You can't hate Africa and not hate yourself. And you show me one of these people over here who have been thoroughly brainwashed, who has a negative attitude toward Africa, and I'll show you one that has a negative attitude toward himself.
Thus, the oppressor's propaganda system has programmed us into having a negative attitude towards Africa. In San Francisco, on African Liberation Day, Brother Walter Rodney, an African historian, noted both the importance of African Liberation Day in terms of our African identity and some of the root causes for our problem of identification.
I have met brothers and sisters who say that their mother tongue, quote unquote, is French, Spanish, Dutch, Portuguese, as well as English, which we speak. And because of this, we have a problem of identification. We do not know whom we are. And that is why this gathering is of great symbolic importance, because it is an act of identification. We are saying that we identify with the African people of the African continent. We are saying that we are an African people. And when we make this identification, have no illusions about the fact that this is a very revolutionary initiative. It is